final item under new business tonight is RSA 91-A protocols. Mr. Morris?
Yes, as the council may remember, we've had discussions about ways to minimize the cost of a 91A request that similar to what we've had. I've went round and round with this since we've had that discussion. I've looked at coding some different emails, looking at ways to do file systems within my email to clean things up and things that we can do within the city. I went back and forth. I really didn't like the idea of deleting out emails and keeping those out, but as I did more research, I realized that the other ways, they wouldn't really reduce the cost much. So if we're looking at reducing the cost of this, having those emails there, may be able to pull a few of what was in my email box out, but it really wouldn't minimize the cost by a lot. As you guys seen the redactions, there were many things in there that I'm sure surprised some of the council, and some of the things that I looked at that I wouldn't have even thought of it being in there. I have talked to Attorney Tangy. He was at my conference this last weekend, and we talked about it a little bit. I know there was some concern about the budget documents that were redacted, and then some of the private emails. In those, the budget documents that were redacted were draft documents, and per RSA 91, draft documents are not, they don't have to be disclosed. They're not disclosable documents. So that's why they redacted those, and then they did the balancing test that we had talked about before as well with the personal emails. And that, as you remember, that balancing test comes down to the public's right to know versus the privacy interest of that person, and which one is stronger. And they felt, releasing personal contact information really had no bearing on the city's, I forgot how they worded, but it's, the city's actions and what the city's doing. It's really truly just a privacy interest, and there could possibly be some liability there if the person were to get contacted by someone outside the organization and the city's the one that had released that information. So the attorneys thought that was prudent to take that out and move it forward. I also did research talking to other cities and towns. I started putting some information out on the listserv to see if anybody else has had similar RSAs and if they had any email policies or protocols that they had done. Didn't get much back. I did get one from a town, and I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but I could get that. But they had a very similar one, but they had all of their city employees for 6 months. They wanted all of their emails. They said they did the same thing as they went through, and they had legal looking at these, that it took them over 6 months to go through them all and to look at them, redact them. It was a high cost. They have set up some things within their software to automatically delete emails, and they created a policy where the staff's supposed to save any emails that meet RSA 33 document retention through the state. So, those, when those emails came in, they think of the email as just a communication tool, which is what it is, and it's mentioned in many NHMA documents as well, that it's a communication tool and not a data storage software. So they use it that way, and they actually set up a 45-day, because they had the 6-month email, but they automatically deleted any junk email, deleted email, and email out of their inbox. So the staff had a certain amount of time to make sure that was saved appropriately. I didn't think that was the right way to do it, and then I made a few phone calls. I did talk to Elizabeth Dragon in Keene and Sean Mulholland in Lebanon and talked about what they did. Elizabeth talked a lot about exactly what I talked about here in my letter, that she goes through and she treats her email as we do any other document in the city. Deleting spam, getting rid of spam, getting rid of conversational type emails that really don't support the function of the city. We do this on a daily basis. We get letters in the mail and advertisements from companies, and we look at it and, oh, hey, they're trying to sell us a new robotic lawnmower, and then it goes in the recycle bin. And as I told you before, I didn't do that. I've kind of been brought up through my government career that you just keep everything in case in case you need to give it out. And it was a big part of the reason we had over 8,000 emails that went out. There was, everything I had was kept. So I personally think that may be the only way to minimize this. I've been looking at my email the last few weeks. I don't have numbers for you. I didn't do that kind of data tracking, but a lot of the emails that come in are advertisements, some spam, and just the basic conversational type emails, you know, hey, do you have time for a meeting on Tuesday? And those types of things, if we got rid of those and deleted them legally, as per the Attorney General said, I think we could really minimize the amount of emails there, probably half or even maybe less than that coming through there. The other thing that I can do at that time is set up a good filing system where any attorney-client privileged information, those types of things can get into a folder, which could very easily be culled out before we had to send some stuff to the attorney. So I think we can minimize the costs in the future that way. There still may be substantial costs to the city. This is not a Claremont problem. Lebanon said they have not had one yet, but they're preparing for it. They know it's coming. I heard from John Mulholland today that Manchester had one that cost them in the realm of $30,000. When I talked to Elizabeth in Keene, they're adding a second attorney on at Keene for 91A requests only. It's a huge expense to cities to be dealing with this, with the electronic change that happened in 2017, where there's no cost to the city and there's no cost to the people for this. It has been causing some of these bigger requests for people just looking at things in general. They're not asking for specific documents. You know, prior to that change, all the documents went out in paper format, and if they're paying 50 cents a piece, they would not want over 8,000 pages worth of information that they do not want. So it's really the only way that I found that would reduce the cost. Thinking back on this, I don't know that I would have done much different. I did talk to you guys a little bit earlier. We got the 91A request in late May. We quickly notified the council. We downloaded all the emails. We switched them all to PDF and had them in a file. I had asked Doré to start going through them. It did not take her long to come to me and say, we don't have the bandwidth to do this. It's going to take forever to even try to go through these and sort them so we can send some to the attorney and some not. So when I talked to Drummond Woodsum, Sean Tangy on the phone, he had a couple interns and he thought he could get this and get it turned around in a few weeks, and it would be, I don't want to say minimal cost to the city, but he could reduce the cost to the city by doing it that way. We got the information to the attorney, and when he got it, I think it turned into the bigger project that nobody truly expected, and ended up taking a lot of not only the interns' time, but a lot of attorneys' time as they went through this and figured out what to do and imposed the balancing test that the attorney talked to us about. Again, in talking with the other city managers, I talked through them, the process that we did and what happened, and they both agreed with me that there wasn't much different to do, and they would have done something very similar. They would have gotten those emails and sent them to the attorney to be looked through. And again, we don't have the staff. I don't know that any city really has the staff to go through something like that and to try to do it on their own. And then I also wouldn't put myself or any of my staff in a position of having to make that legal decision. So, you know, many of these emails would have had to go to them anyway.
Councilor Kowalski, then Councilor Matto.
I immediately sent an email with an objection to the city manager. I don't know if any other councilors saw that, but I had called into question redacting per email addresses. I still think that that's bogus. It highlights on the city's website, as it does most major communities, not even just here. I just emailed a town in Vermont, and it tells you your email is subject to 91A or whatever RSA. So So I mean, I'm still wrapping my head around that, and if it's my own personal attorney, that would be an argument I would have with them, where we're paying for that, and I don't agree with that. If it's communication to this board, we, in our own rules, we don't take anonymous communication, so we blank out their email address, but we leave their name in the email. So going down that course that someone from not this body is going to contact that person. Well, Google will let you do that anyways. I don't get it. And then any documents that come to us, I mean, it was very upsetting to see that the redactions made in a draft budget. How about you write the word draft across it? I mean, that seemed crazy to me that that's redacted, including number of city employees, all redacted. I mean, that's public information. I mean, that part I don't agree with. I don't agree with, I mean, how silly does it look that our financial, I think it was our goals met, redacted? I mean, I don't agree with some of the redactions were made. I'm firm to that, and I don't know where we go from here, but even to send spam emails along is upsetting to me, and not just get rid of the spam box. And saying that we wouldn't do something differently, I think we should be doing something differently. I don't want to spend $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 a year vetting emails. And I will tell you, going through the number that I had, there were a lot of, not even from me, they're all somebody replying to something. And of all of the ones redacted of mine, there's not a thing in there that I wouldn't have handed over if someone asked me. I would have printed it and said, here you go. Commonly I do that. And that's just my take.
Counselor Matto?
So, I agree with Counselor Kowalski. I think we're going way overboard on not being transparent to the public. 99% of what we do, whether we do it in an email, whether we do it up at this board, whether it happens in a staff meeting, is the public's business. There's very little that should be kept away from them. What people make that work for the city, that's public knowledge. That doesn't have to be redacted. If somebody writes an email to the city, their email, public knowledge. You write an email to the city, then you're making yourself public by just writing the email. To go to the extent to redact, and I know that you don't have to say that a draft is a public document, but you also don't have to go to the expense of paying a $200 an hour lawyer to redact something that's sitting on the website that they can see anyway. That's common sense. It's common sense also to not send 1,000 spam emails to a lawyer to review. That's common sense. We have to get back to common sense and transparency to the public, and maybe we'll get a lot less 91A requests if they think we're not hiding things. But I think a lot of people think we're hiding things. And, you know, I think we need to come up with a policy. I suggested this way back when we started this, to start classifying your emails, start getting rid of your junk emails, so that when this comes up again, and it will, we're not spending another $30,000. That makes me sick to my stomach.
Counselor Stone, then Counselor Ahern.
I agree with both Councilor Kowalski and Councilor Matto that I disagree with a lot of redactions that were done. They're kind of a moot point. It cost us a lot of money, and this next part really pains me. But I would seriously recommend this going to the policy committee for development of a policy. And then return to the council.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
Yeah. Counselor Ahern?
I'm just going to say that I said this before. I said that the city employee elected official, you have less expectation of privacy, and as a city employee, you have a little bit more protection. So I was a little disappointed that we're talking about again, all jumbling it into one. We actually need to be discussing it as a council, what our protocol is for releasing of our emails compared to what the city manager needs to do for his side. I was just, again, taken back that we have no plan and no idea tonight. We're just going to discuss something that I think should be discussed at a different thing, because that was a different issue. We should be not incorporating into this discussion. I mean, we know what that was, and that's another animal that we got to put to rest, and then we got to deal with this.
Mr. Morris?
Yeah, I want to say I agree with Councilor Mattow and Councilor Kolosky as well. I did want to explain a little on the spam folder and those types of things. I've often found emails from counselors and other people that have been collected into that folder. So again, to me, that comes back to the bandwidth. We just did not have the employee time. We struggled to get the day-to-day stuff done, and when we were trying to go through these and sort them out, we just didn't have the time to go through all these emails. So I agree. That's really what my proposal is to delete those as they come in and get them out of the folder quickly. You know, it's not a transparency thing to get rid of junk emails and spam and basic conversational stuff. And I also recommend that we go above and beyond the RSA. It says that any email sent to the quorum of a public body, and I actually would recommend that any email sent to any member of the public body should be kept and stored appropriately. So any of those conversations can go, but the day-to-day basic conversations, the spam email, the advertisements, those, you know, hey, there's a conference coming up. If we're not planning on going to that, those types of things, I think we can cull out of the email quickly and really reduce the amount of emails that may need to go.
So, before we go on with more questions, Counselor Stone did make a recommendation. I think we need to send this to policy because we still don't have an email policy, to the best of my knowledge. And I don't know, Mr. Morris, if you've taken steps. I'm going by this excerpt from NHMA. It is crucial that your employees are trained in records retention as well as other policies like email policies. So I don't know if that's been done, but clearly we can discuss this a lot longer, but it really needs to be put down in black and white what the policy is. Councilor DeMars and
I'm
then
just
Councilor
going to
Matt.
reiterate what I heard from Councilor Stone. I'm also on the policy committee. It also pains me greatly, but I think that we could make some real headway with putting together some framework of particularly how we handle redactions. You know, what's expected, so that, you know, hopefully we get on the same page, and in the future when these requests come through, you know, what the council's wishes are as to how that is handled is conveyed to the attorneys, so that we're not keeping away information from the public that we really don't want to keep away from the public, and B, paying ridiculous amounts of money to attorneys to spend all this time doing redactions that really are meaningless. So I think that's a policy that needs to be attended to, and I hesitate to volunteer. I know I'm going to spend a lot of time with Councilor Stone, and
Being
we're
unpaid.
going to have some fun with that, but I think it's doable.
Councilor Matto, then Councilor Stone.
There's a memorandum that I believe was written by the Secretary of State or somebody. It's a very extensive 91A memorandum, and I've read it many times, but it really delves into what the intent of 91A is and how it's important. We use email these days, much like they used to use letters in the 70s and the 80s. People don't write letters and correspondence anymore. It's all done electronically. So even though we don't have expectations of privacy as elected officials, I don't think employees really do either. When they're doing the city's business via email and they're talking about policy and whatever, that is a part of the public record. And it shouldn't be destroyed just because it's over 45 days old. So we need to be really careful about what we're going to just get rid of, because we need to understand the whole point of the 91A and that. So that's something that the committee should look into. The other side of the coin is we might think about, because other communities are going to face this too, is maybe looking at an LSR on seeing what we can do to get some of these costs covered going forward. I mean, if we're gonna spend $30,000 on this one request, by the time it's all said and done, and that's potentially what the number might be, it's already at 21 now, and this happens 3 or 4 times a year, then, and it's happening to other communities, then there should be some way to recoup that.
Well, that would be a legislative action. And
Exactly.
when we did have the last get-together with the mayors from 13 cities, the cost is extensive. There are cities that have, as the city manager said, a separate employee dedicated just to 91A requests. So they're paying, salary and benefits for that.
Right.
And yes, that it's the balance of being transparent, but at the same time, the reality is if you have certain types of requests, it does take a lot of staff time to respond to them.
And before the law was changed a few years back, there used to be a caveat in there that said that that staff time could be reimbursed or charged to the person asking for the 91A, and that's gone away. So it might
So
be
at this-
something to look at again.
Yeah, but so at this point, the only way you could introduce an LSR this legislative session is via the Senate, because the House has already gone by. It was 13 to 17 September. Councilor Stone and then Councilor Gerard.
Now, what I was recommending is establishing a policy at the committee level for the governing body, this council. I don't think we should really intrude on the city manager and his employees at this point. I think it should be strictly something established for us, for our handling of our 91 requests. And maybe that will include a way to document something that's non-privileged versus privileged, to reduce the numbers.
Councilor Gerard?
Again, they keep reference to 33-A, and there's four pages of timeframes. There's so many different items that need to be held at different standards. It's very, you're gonna be spending a lot of time trying to figure out, does this meet that standard, does it not meet that standard? Gonna run into with this is the fact that once somebody realizes that now we only keep this for 45 days, that now we're gonna be getting the request on day 30 instead of day 45 or day 60. So as much as I'd like to think we're gonna save ourselves a lot of hassle, I don't think we're going to. Again, we've got to figure out, I agree with the manager saying get rid of the spam and the sales and everything else he can to try to minimize, but I think it's gonna be difficult beyond that.
Assistant Mayor Dameron? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think part of the problem that we look at is the multitude of redacted duplicate memos. Like if there's 99 of us sitting here in the same documents, it's just ridiculous. That shouldn't, and in my case, I went through quite a few of them. I did. I spent probably about a good 4 hours one night looking at most of them. And most of the stuff I found was redacted email addresses on multiple documents that we had all sent out or we had all received. That's just, it's crazy. I'm sorry. There's no other way to say it. It's crazy. An email address, redacting it is crazy, especially in today. How many emails do we get on our city email asking, oh, Mayor Lovett needs a private task to help me with? I get that one at least once a month. So I really don't
Not
buy,
really for me.
I really don't buy it.
Wait,
I
those
just
aren't
don't
real.
buy that we need to redact those addresses. You're not gonna sell it to me.
Okay. So I think Assistant Mayor Dameron, and then let's wrap it up.
Yeah, I think what we've all been talking about is something we didn't face before now. A 91A request to see on a broad level emails. Perfectly legit, you're entitled to them. But I'm used to seeing a 91A request for emails concerning this or that. And this wasn't anything to do with that. And we don't have a set of policies around that now deal with exactly what Councilor Stone was talking about. How are we expected to be dealing with and who keeps the emails that perhaps have gone to all of us saying the same thing? Who keeps that? And by the way, once we have the policy set, I think it would behoove us to better understand what the balancing privacy rules are or what the attorneys consider. We may regard it as laughable, and that's fine, but I think we better understand that to kind of wrap the policy up in a ribbon and have it nice and neat and done, and so that we're very knowledgeable about what we've just put to bed. So I think getting it to the policy committee is the way to go.
Mr. Morris? Did you want to say anything further?
No, I was just going to say, I've been attending the policy committees, and I think it's a good idea, and as we work through how the council does that, I can work with the same information to craft a policy for the staff.
Okay, Counselor Pulaski?
I'd like to make a motion to send this to the policy committee.
I was just going to ask
for
somebody to do that.
review of or to draft a council email policy.
Second.
All right. So that motion was made by Counselor Pulaski, seconded by Counselor Knight. When you're ready, roll call, please.
Send this to the policy committee to draft.
A council email policy.
Yes. Counselor Ahern, you had,
I just want to make sure that Council Colossi got the exact wording he wanted for that.
I did.
Okay.
I did. Thank you.
oh my God.
Send you an email.
Counselor Ahern.
Yes.
Counselor Gerard.
Yes.
Counselor DeMars.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor Dameron.
Yes.
Counselor Mantel.
Yes.
Counselor Colossi.
Yes.
Counselor Conchoy.
Yes.
Counselor Stone.
Yes.
Mayor Lovett.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, policy committee, for your diligent work on this.
We feel your pain.
Yeah.
Any-
No, we don't. Not yet.
Future agenda items and directives. Who has something, anything?